On the 20th of November this year, Ashley Taylor made the mistake not to think twice. The paramedics were the first on the scene, and they began to negotiate the priority of the casualties. It was obvious that Ashley was badly injured and his victim also. This was to be the day that changed Ashley's life forever. Thousands of people are killed every year on our road, rivers and rails. Here are just some of the ways it could happen to you.
I think that the most tragic situation was a young guy who was going through a family breakup. Had a particularly serious set-to with his partner. Had a vast quantity of alcohol before he left the home, and ended up putting his car into a ditch between two trees. Fortunately, he was the only vehicle involved.
As we do, we patrol every hour to make sure no one's in alleyways or fell over in, by themselves. And Downews Avenue, which is a long, dark road, which leads 2 steps down to where the the ferry is based. And a young lad was drunk and he was staggering all over the place. And if my colleagues had been like 2 seconds late, he would actually fell into the river. And hence we would be looking at probably a death scenario.
There was a young male driving a car who tried to get round the level crossing gates, was hit by the train. He was trapped in his car underneath the train for quite a long time before he was rescued by the ambulance and the fire service.
In this case, the amount of drugs and alcohol still in this young lad's system affect his awareness, his reactions and stability, which unfortunately results in an unfortunate death.
Like the first time getting in, just didn't even think about it. You're not going to think anything's going to happen to you. You always think it's going to be someone else. So I got in, and then we were just driving along, and I was thinking, this is going a bit, he's going really fast. And the music was really loud, and I was like, he's not concentrating. He was going really fast, and then there was this massive puddle, and he just went through it, and it just completely just skidded across the road, and then rolled down this hill. And all I just remember is just like grabbing my friend's hand and being like, oh my God, and seeing the boy completely just take his hands away from the steering wheel. And his brother went to grab it. And I was like, this is it, I'm dead, And when I came round, everyone had got out of the car. And I was just like, phone an ambulance, I can't get out, I'm completely stuck, I can't move. And they were just like, they didn't know what to do. And I was like, come on, you need to phone an ambulance, you need to phone my mum, you need to... And I was like saying everything, and I just had all this horrible things happen, no one knew what to do. Before all that, like I said, I thought I was gonna die. I really did, I couldn't hardly breathe. And so I started singing to myself, trying to keep myself awake, because I was just like, no, Jordan, you've got a well bigger life to live than what you've already done. You're only 15, come on. And it's just awful how something you think wouldn't be able to change your life does, From there I got into the ambulance, and then I went to hospital, and then I was in King's Lynn Hospital for 5 days in critical care, and then I had to be airlifted to Sheffield spinal unit, which I was there, and I was there for 6 months. I couldn't sit up or anything for a month. I had to be dead flat, and I had this metal thing around my head. It was disgusting, and it was all drilled in my head, and I had these weights holding my head back like this. It was great. It was horrible. It hurt, and it was horrible. I had all glass in my hair. The nurses thought my hair was red because I had so much blood in it, and glass, and all my face had blood all here. I had all glass inside my face, and That was horrible.
Looking at road incidents, about 18 months ago I had to deal with a situation where somebody was young, driving a small car too quickly, inability to control the car, ended up in the death of a couple of people and their dog, which wasn't nice to see.
And the young people used to do something they called surfing, which was get on the back of a train while it's at the platform stationary, and then travel on the train, hanging onto the back until it got to the end of the platform, and then jump off. And they don't seem to realise how extremely dangerous that is. One slip and they're dead.
A group of friends went out to the local pub, had a nice chili con carne, which I'll come back to in a moment. The driver, they were all going to catch a taxi, but in the end the driver said, no, I'm okay, it's all back roads, we'll be fine. Unfortunately, he thought he was fully in control, and he wasn't. He'd had far too much to drink, lost control on the series of sharp bends, the car overturned, a chap in the back who wasn't wearing his seatbelt, none of them were, they all thought, well, we're okay. He was ejected out of one of the windows and virtually chopped in half, obviously died. And the contents of the meal that he was enjoying with his friends a few hours earlier was spilled all over the back of the car and over the field.
I've been to a young gentleman who was 21 years of age, had been taking cocaine the night before, had rolled over in bed and made a strange noise. His girlfriend had got up, and when she went back upstairs he had vomited, and because he was still not right after the cocaine, unfortunately he died and we couldn't do anything for him.
It was this point, earlier on in the day, that changed Ashley's life forever.
Ready for another one then? Just one more before we go?
No, I don't know.
Come on. Just one more?
No, I've got a drive, haven't I?
So am I, mate. I've only got a drive around the corner. Nothing's going to happen.
More and more emergency services arrive at the scene and time is running out. The victim from the other car is obviously feeling very lost and shocked. It is now down to the services to act quickly and professionally to get Ashley out safely and alive. As the fire services assess the situation, it becomes clear that this was not an accident. Ashley is driven straight out from a junction and into the side of the victim's car. His reactions were slow, and this was due to the alcohol in his system.
I've really lost count of the amount of road incidents I've been involved with. Most of the incidents, I'd probably say 80%, usually involve drink or drugs on the roads. There are other accidents that happen, but usually they aren't fatalities. So most of the ones I've been to have been drink related.
Certainly statistics show us that the highest age group or the highest at-risk group is the 17 to 24-year-olds, and within that certainly young male drivers are the most at risk simply because of the characteristics of the young male. They will show off to friends, to girlfriends, and they will be encouraged to drive far beyond their actual limits, and without a doubt they are the biggest contributing factor to the amount of road traffic crashes that we attend.
And also, you know, you can be drawn into peer pressure, boy races, etc., where that leads to tragic consequences.
The most common age group that trespass on the railway or commit some sort of offence on the railway is the 12 to 16-year-old bracket. But we're also finding that the adult bracket as well, let's say from 16 upwards, is increasing every day, whether it's trespass on the railway or vandalism or even level crossing misuse. We're finding nowadays that the number of misuse at level crossings is on the increase. When I hear an incident on the railway that has been drink or drug related, I'm very sad, very, very sad, because to me it's such a waste. And the one message I do give to young people is like, be aware of your surroundings all the time. If you've had a couple of drinks or if you've had something to smoke, your judgment is so impaired, your vision is blurred, you're not going to be in control of your actions. So when I hear that people have gone down that route and something terrible has happened, then I'm very sad to hear that.
There could even be criminal proceedings in the court that lead to prison sentences or community-based criminal court orders. If you get a criminal record, it's going to make things very difficult for the future. Be careful about mixing prescription drugs and alcohol. And then on illegal drugs, again, it's just being aware that illegal drugs do affect people's perception, they affect people's functioning. And when you're driving a car, potentially you're driving a ton of steel at 60 miles an hour. And clearly using drugs is not going to help.
The force behind a full speed train really depends on the speed of the train itself. So for instance, if a high speed train is going at 125 miles per hour, we say that it takes the length of roughly 20 Premiership football pitches for that train to stop. So if a train is going at 125 miles per hour and the driver sees somebody on the track and pulls the brake, it doesn't necessarily mean that he or she is going to be able to stop in time. And if that person is struck by a train, worst case scenario, we call it the water balloon effect. So imagine filling a balloon full of water, throwing it against the wall, and that splatter is the same effect of a body being hit by a train going at that speed.
A train travelling at 90 miles an hour, you have 4 seconds from the moment you hear the train to getting out of the way. And that's if you've heard the train.
There are a number of measures in place already on the railway to prevent young people and adults actually getting onto the railway. For instance, fencing. There is fencing all along the infrastructure, and that is a sign to tell people that this area is very, very dangerous. This is not an area to access. We also have a number of signs, whether they're electricity signs or danger high voltage signs. And we also have penalty signs up as well to warn people if they do trespass on the railway, there is a consequence to doing that. My advice to young people and to adults as well, if you've been for a night out in Kings Lynn and thinking about taking a shortcut home across the railway, my one thing to say is don't even think about it, don't do it. The railway may be the easy option, but it's the dangerous option.
One project was very specific around Kings Lynn, was to provide a place of safety within the nighttime economy of Kings Lynn, to look at supporting vulnerable people and assisting them, those that were perhaps incapable through drink or drugs, homeless people, and to be there as a sort of a fourth emergency service and a safe haven.
My job role is project manager for Safe Haven. It entails management of staff, recruiting volunteers, ensuring they're CRB checked and capable to fulfil the positions that I'm asking them to take on.
The guy at Chicago's, he was a 27-year-old male. He had 1 centimetre cut, quite close to the main artery in your cheek, so he's quite lucky in a way. He would need about 4 to 6 stitches, so he's pretty lucky in a way, because if he got punched in the face a little bit further up, then it would have nipped his artery. He'd be a lot worse off than he is now.
This project is volunteer-led, and we could not at all run this project would it not be for the volunteer. I firmly believe that you cannot dampen the heart of a volunteer. Ashley Allop, my project manager, has done an absolutely outstanding job, and I'm so proud of him and what his team have done for this project. It just goes from strength to strength, and the people of Kings Lynn now feel even safer than they are already on a Friday and Saturday night thanks to this project.
It's a race against the clock as paramedics and fire crews work together to get Ashley out of his car. In order to do this, they will have to remove the roof of the car. This can sometimes be a complex procedure. The paramedics then cover Ashley to stop any further injury from the extraction. Luckily, the fire crew works well and the roof of the car is extracted with no further problems. The services now need to work together to carefully remove Ashley from the vehicle. The incident itself is only the beginning of the long and painful journey after losing someone special. This is Amy. She was killed at 19 when a speeding driver hit her car at 85 miles an hour. Here is her mum, Liz, to tell us more.
And then I said, she's still alive, isn't she? And this ambulance man just came up to me and said, no, I can't lie to you. So, you just can't imagine. So by now I'm frantic, absolutely frantic to get to her. And they did actually manoeuvre the door so that I could get round and get into the car beside her. Amy was slumped across the passenger seat. So I leant in to hold her, and the passenger footwell was full of blood. And Amy was laid across, and all I could do was climb in and hold her and stroke her hair because she was still warm. To me, she was just asleep. because I was speaking to her on the phone not 20 minutes ago, but she was there. And in the end, I was dragged away. I had to go and identify my daughter's body. There wasn't a mark on her. What had happened, the car had hit her so hard from behind that she'd hit the side of her head somewhere on a doorpost somewhere, and she looked like she was asleep. Beautiful, serene, and I had to say, yes, this is my daughter. You're in this zone of unreality. This can't happen. No, this can't happen. You don't outlive your children. Amy made a difference to people in her life. All her college friends, all her workmates, all the kids that she'd gone to school with. And they all felt for us and they all missed her. But we're the ones that are feeling the pain and the anger and the frustration and the isolation of our children being killed. We all know when we get behind the wheel of a car the potential of damage you can do to other people. But not most people, a lot of people just ignore that. They get behind the wheel of the car, I can, so I will. They know the laws, they know the speed limits, they know why they're there. They know they shouldn't get behind the wheel of a car when they've had a drink or they've taken drugs. They know that. But they still do it, and they cross that line of intent. The minute they make that choice, and we all have choices, they are up the ante, and they are potential killers.
But if it's suddenly a death, as in an instant death, there's a lot of questions they need to ask you, and some of the times you haven't got those answers.
Hello, Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Hi, can we come in?
But they still expect you to know, and it can be quite traumatic for the officers who have to go and give these messages.
He's been involved in a car accident and he hasn't survived.
There's a sort of a ripple effect out of the people who are affected. So there's the individual, but there's their family, there's their friends, there's people that know them, there's other road users.
I think the first one I would say is devastation, a sudden death in particular, and one of the main ones is guilt. If it is through drink driving, then there's a lot of blame, and initially as well denial, and that can take the form of wanting to get back to work quickly and to forget it's happened.
You have to go and unfortunately tell them that they've either been killed through a tragic accident or they've overdosed on drugs, etc. And that really does have an impact both on you personally as a professional officer, but also in terms of the impact of the wider family that are left behind.
Police said that the vehicle was doing over 30. So at the point of impact, that would have probably been double the speed. And that killed him instantly. A good brother, I loved him lots, and I'm really glad that we could show off his work. I think my dad and my mum want to keep hold of the ashes as long as possible, just for memory, really.
William, killed at just 21, because the driver of the car he was in had taken a small amount of drugs. It's these drugs that affected his driving ability, which then resulted in a head-on crash with a truck. His mum, Lynn, came in to talk to us about this day.
I was out working in the evening when I got the phone call from my husband to tell me that there had been a crash and that William and Lindsay and Mark were all involved. They'd all gone to different hospitals, but I was to come home. I said, well, are they all right? Oh yes, as far as we know, but he actually knew that William was dead at this time. But because I didn't know, I drove safely home. But of course, when I saw the police car outside the house, I knew what to expect. It didn't sink in when I was told. I just sort of went off and made a cup of tea. He died on the way to hospital of multiple internal injuries. And after that, everything was just a case of doing the funeral. I wasn't in the real world, really. Everything's going on around me, friends turning up, organising coffins, flowers, and it just did not sink in. It wasn't, I suppose previously I'd lost parents and I've lost a brother, and I just felt that this would be something that I would get over. But it's now nearly 16 years and I've never got over it, and I never will get over it. In fact, I was unable to work, I lost my job, I lost my pension rights, the family was, it was a very strained time for everybody. I then subsequently had a word with my son's girlfriend, Lindsay, and she said, well, yes, Mark had taken something before he got in the car. So I said, how do you know? So she said, well, he admitted to the ambulance drivers who attended the scene, the ambulance attendants, because they asked, had you taken anything? Obviously they needed to know from a health point of view. Within 2 weeks, suddenly the charge of careless driving was dropped, and we now had a charge of causing death of my son William while under the influence of drugs. The driver pleaded guilty, and I was grateful for that. He'd made a mistake. He'd taken drugs, which he shouldn't have done, and then got in a car. I just wanted him to stand up and realise what he'd done and to pay the price for it.
After the incident, it's not only the friends and families that are affected, but the members of the emergency services who also have to cope too with the events of the day.
The emotional baggage that comes with that, if you like, doesn't change. It's how you deal with it, and experience certainly tells you that, or enables you to deal with it in a far better way.
There's an example of speeding in a car, going back to the point of the feeling of invincibility and the quick reactions, but lack of perception of dangers. A young gentleman unfortunately struck some pedestrians a couple of years back and killed these people and left one other person, one young child, sitting on the side of the road, obviously in a great deal of shock. The difficult thing for me was that one of the people that had been killed was the same age, height, build, colour of hair, colour of eyes as my daughter. And that evening I took a long time to calm enough to sleep, because all I could see throughout the time I was trying to go off to sleep was this little girl's broken body. Is no other way of putting it. It's harsh, but it's truthful. A broken body with my daughter's face, and I found that quite testing. It's not often I cry, but now and again you do have to let things out.
In terms of being strong, yes, you have to remain strong, because the people there want answers from you. They want to know how this person's died, or the circumstances which led to their loss. And you have to be strong in terms of being professional and explaining to them the reasons behind the person's death as far as you can. And also there's a great deal of procedures which come with that incident, such as the coroner, such as post-mortems, etc. And those people want an explanation at a certain period of time after you've delivered the news, so they can begin to understand the consequences themselves.
The worst incidents I've heard that are drink and drug related are ones that involve young people. My reaction is disbelief and shock at first, I would say, yes.
It can be extremely difficult. Sometimes you go home from work and you've had a really good day and you feel a bit emotionally high, and then on other days when you've had a really bad day, you go home and you feel really low, and sometimes it can actually, play on your mind quite a lot.
The victim of Ashley's incident is also badly injured. The ambulance treat her as best as they can. They then prepare her to be taken to the hospital. The next hour for her shall be critical, fearing she may have permanent head injuries. As she is put into the ambulance, her condition deteriorates as she begins to fall in and out of consciousness. So much injury to an innocent victim because Ashley made the mistake not to think twice.
Well, with young people and drinks and drugs, it comes back to this feeling, I think, of invincibility when you are young. You don't think it's going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. I'm too young. I've got too much to live for. It can happen to you. It does happen to you.
So there, the key message for a driver is actually think about not only responsibility for yourself, but for other people in the car and other road users as well.
And it doesn't make a difference how many times you send the message out, don't drink and drive. People still think they are capable of doing it.
There's a huge amount of material out there which gives you advice. Read it and digest it and pay attention to it, because often you're most receptive when you're not drunk, when you're not under the influence, etc. And it's most important that you take that message home, that you actually understand the dangers of being involved in excessive drinking, taking drugs of any kind, or fooling about on roads or rails or near railways or near water. It does have tragic consequences. You see day to day on the media and locally in terms of people who've ended their life tragically.
Your life is the most precious thing you will ever have. Don't waste it. Don't put yourself and others at risk.
And to think of the bigger picture, think of all the people that are involved, your family, your friends. Friends can be really, really affected by the death of someone, and it's important that you think of them before you go drinking and driving.
For everybody who gets behind the wheel of a car, the car is a killing machine. Don't break the speed limit, don't drink and drive, don't take drugs, and above all, be sensible when you're driving. The results of being insensible are horrific.
Under any circumstances, whether you're drinking or taking drugs, you are totally accountable for the consequences of your action. If the guy hadn't been speeding, Amy would probably still be here today.
I think people should think before they do things. Especially if people have just passed the tests and stuff, they need to realise that they're not, like I say, people aren't invincible. They can't think they can do all these things like speeding and, if like people have been drinking and they're gonna go driving, what's the point, You might as well just get someone else to drive or find another way, because you can think, oh, I'll be okay, this won't happen to me. Because everyone thinks that, like, oh, that won't happen to me. It's like there's loads of things in the world you think will never happen to you, but it's got to happen to someone, hasn't it? And I think people should just think before they do things, definitely. Because if you just do that, it could save your life.
Don't let it happen to you.
With time running out, the fire and ambulance crew must work quickly but carefully to get Ashley out of the car without damaging his back anymore. Could you put yourself through this? It's your choice. Your victim doesn't get to choose.